Hello and welcome to this game review, which features Max U or Max Euwe. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce his name, so I apologize if it's pronounced incorrectly. He was the fifth world chess champion after he defeated Alekhine in 1935, but then Alekhine regained the title in 1937. So let's check this game out. It was recommended by a viewer when we talked about the Ready opening and what Sigbert Tereš, another great chess player, thought of the Ready opening back in the late 1800s into the early 2000, or excuse me, into the early 1900s. He put out a book called The Game of Chess in, I believe, the 1930s, and that book talked a little bit about the Ready opening. Sigbert Tereš felt that the Ready opening wasn't the best opening. So let's see what happens here when this player who I'm not very familiar with, Kleefstra, decides to play the Ready opening. Knight to f3. This is the Ready opening. There are different ways to play it. It looks like d5 is recommended. You just take control of the center since your opponent is allowing you to do that. You can't play this pawn, of course, or the knight could just capture, but maybe you play c5 and d5 depending on what your opponent does. And now we have an immediate attack, the Ready gambit. Do you accept the gambit, capturing this flank pawn and pulling your valuable central pawn from the center? Or do you play the best move? And Sigbert Tereš back, in 1800s, early 1900s, he felt that this was the best move when other masters recommended, e6 defending or c6. Back then, Tereš felt that this was the best move, and according to the computer, it likes this move as well. You gain space in the middle of the board. You avoid trading your more valuable central pawn for this less valuable flank pawn, and you kind of cramp White's position a little bit. So the game continues with b4, and now we have f6. Normally, you don't want to push this f pawn as it could lead to possible attacks on the king, if you could get a queen or a bishop up here. But, things are kind of closed in the center at the moment, so there's time. And also, this f6 move, it prevents the knight from jumping forward. It allows this pawn to push forward to e5, and then you'll have a nice strong pawn chain down through the middle of the board. And the center of the pawns in the center, they'll be aiming towards the queen side. So most likely you want to conduct some play over there on the queen side, since that's the direction that your pawns are pointing in the center. So we have the fianchetto of the bishop, but what is this bishop really doing? The computer prefers a3 because once this pawn is pushed forward, the bishop is going to really be blocked by this wall of pawns. So sure enough, the fifth world chess champion, he finds the best move in this position. So now we have a3, protecting this pawn that's under attack by the bishop. The game continues with c3, and now capture, bishop captures. So that kind of, there's a saying to take as a mistake. Let's see what they said about this capture here. So after taking this, it says it's good, but e3 would have been better, because after this capture and recapture, that just helped black to develop a piece here. So the game continues with White trying to gain some space here, pushing the pawn. Maybe he'll be able to develop a knight here and then attack that bishop in the future, from either one of these squares. Knight develops. and white does likewise. So now both sides are just developing, but black already has an edge here, and we're only 8 moves into the game, and black has a pretty good edge. So the pawn presses forward here, starting an attack in the center, but also it allows this knight to land on usually the best square for the knight over here on the king side. White pushes forward and gets ready to fianchetto so that the king can castle kingside. The computer claims that's an inaccuracy, that knight to b3 would have been better, chasing that bishop. So the game continues with knight developing, bishop developing. Once again, the computer prefers knight to b3, attacking the bishop. The game continues with castling, and now it's the world champion's first inaccuracy. It probably wasn't, too serious of an inaccuracy. It's kind of a common sense move. Get that king castled, put the rook behind a pawn that has been pressed forward, and this file will probably likely open, perhaps after pushing, but the computer prefers pushing immediately for a bigger advantage. So here we have both sides castled on the king side. Queen lines up behind this pawn, maybe getting ready to push forward here. So the game continues with knight finally finding that best move of pushing forward and attacking the bishop. The bishop retreats to the center here and aims down towards the king side. Now there's an option of pushing the e pawn or the f pawn. So white counters first in the center, attacking here. So we have capture, recapture, and now the knight jumps up here towards white's king side and also targets this pawn, threatening a fork of the rook and the queen. So the game continues with queen stepping forward, connecting the rooks. This seems like a common sense move, but apparently queen to e2 would be a little bit better. Either way, black would still have the advantage. Queen jumps into the attack here, and now there's a possible threat of pushing forward here, attacking the knight, and then this pawn could be captured if that knight moves. So, if the pawn pushes, if you capture, then the other pawn will capture, and once again that knight is under threat. So the game continues with white pushing forward, preventing or trying to prevent the attack on the knight, but apparently that's a mistake. It would have been better to play rook at a to e1. So let's take a look at that. Rook at a to e1. And then they don't even recommend that move. So, I guess we can take a look at it. A5 apparently is preferred by the computer. But what if that was played? Apparently capture, capture, and there's this blocking possibility. Wow, this is kind of tricky, and I understand why this wasn't played. So now they recommend capturing, rook takes rook, or bishop to e7. Bishop to e7, maybe threatening to take that knight. But white is under pressure here. There's also maybe some kind of possibility of trying to get an attack, but that doesn't even work because then the bishop could block and it would be protected by the knight. So, in case there was an attack, a threat of mate up here. All right, back to what happened in the game. We were in this position. Queen is threatening an attack here along with the knight, which this knight is protecting at the moment. So the game continues with white pushing forward, a mistake. Now we have the pawn push, threatening to break open this king side here. The game continues with capture. Rook captures, and now the black pieces are really funneling into the king side over here. You know, once this bishop moves, where should it move to? Maybe on this diagonal. The other rook can back the first rook up. So here we have a battery being created. So the threat will be that the bishop could attack after this queen moves. And now knight to d4 is played, adding more pressure. And that is the first mistake by the former world champion. But it's not a game losing mistake. Even after this mistake, black would still be in the lead. Apparently a5, the computer likes that better. So let's see what happens. The best move is found, capture, capture, and now a mistake by white. Looks like e5 would have been a better move. Oh, wow. Yeah, if we look at that e5 move, you're attacking the bishop, which is protecting the rook. So there's one move, which is that. And then the recommendation is queen to a5, but black would be way ahead here. So what else could be played? What happens if you capture the bishop? Let's see how bad that is. That would be a mistake because of what? Bishop to h3. Okay. So what if you go ahead and capture that? I don't know. That really opens up the king side, white's king side. So back to what happened in the game. We had this capture. Queen moves over here to help defend the knight. A rook sacrificing the exchange for that knight. Rook captures, but apparently it would have been better, oh wow, to capture with the bishop. So that would have been better because now this pawn would be protected by the queen. Oh, I guess not, because now there's this bishop. Oh, wow. So it's looking pretty bad. The bishop would capture with check here. So the game could continue. Capture. We have a check. So now king to h1, and then you're going to have a discovered attack here. So bishop where? To e5, apparently. It likes that best. Bishop to e5. King moves over to g1. They recommend bishop checking, but you get the idea. White would be wide open here. So back to what happened in the game. We have that capture. The queen captures now. The king runs for its life. Queen steps back. And now we have the king back to where it was. The knight jumps forward. Apparently this is a mistake. Bishop to h2 check would have been better. So the computer prefers this move. And then after what? King to f1. Bishop to g3. So now you have this possibility of forking the king and the rook. Black is just applying serious pressure here. So back to the game. We had this attack on the rook. The rook moves, and now the bishop jumps into the game, attacking the queen. Queen sidesteps that attack, and now the other bishop is attacking the rook, and it's looking grim here for white. So this is a mistake. Rook to... Oh, apparently rook to a2 would have been better. Just giving up your rook, but it would not be good. White would just be, probably losing after that. Either way. So capture, attacking the queen. The queen recaptures. Now the rook attacks the queen and gets in on the action here. So we have 4 pieces hovering around white's king and only 2 defenders, a queen and bishop. Excuse me. Okay, so here the invite to trade queens. That is declined with an attack on the king. A brilliant finish by the 5th world chess champion. This is where the game ends. So there's a mate in 2 here. So before I play that out, let's take a quick look at the game review. It looks like white played with 71.7% accuracy versus 89.3% by the former world chess champion. And we see that he got an advantage pretty much right out of the opening. And he just held on to that advantage before really building on it and attacking in the middle game, until he won. So the bad moves. 5 inaccuracies by Kleefstra, who I'm not familiar with that player. I don't think I've ever heard of him before this game. And the former world champion had 1 inaccuracy and 2 mistakes. His opponent had 4 mistakes. But look at this. Apparently Kleefstra played with a 1650 rating level in that game versus 2400 by the former world champion. Now, this was a smaller tournament in Amsterdam in 1933. So, perhaps this player was, I don't know, not a chess master even, or it could have been a chess master that just had a very bad day against one of the best players of all time, a former world chess champion. So, back to what actually happened, or what could have happened. This is where white resigned. What options does he have here? The only thing he can do would be to capture. So, capture. Now what? It looks like the fastest way to win here would be knight delivers a check. The king can't escape towards the other side of the board because the queen is covering there. And after king up to g2, well, now we have the mate being delivered. And not to mention that the knight could just go ahead and pick off the queen as well. But why go after the queen when you have a mate here on h2? So a lot of times it takes 3 pieces to checkmate the king. And, white had more than 3 pieces going after his king. But in the end, the knight, bishop, and queen all work together, delivering that mate. And of course, this bishop is preventing an escape as well. And this is an interesting pattern where whenever the queen is next to the king on one of the side squares, all these squares come under attack by the queen. So the only available places for the opponent's king to run would be here or here, but the bishop and knight are blocking that king from running. All right, well, feel free to leave comments, like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.